So I've always loved to write. I loved to write before I knew how to write. When I was really young, I would write this lively, tangled line in the margins of rummage what's that called? Rummage store books, and I'd write in the sand, I'd write with a stick in the dirt. I was writing. I loved the energy of the moving line. And then when I came into elementary school, I found that what I really loved about writing were the forms themselves. And I was one of those kids that changed their handwriting all through high school, elementary school, round and upright and backwards and forwards. I loved the shapes of letters and what they strung together. And then as I moved through high school and a totally checkered career of college, I then arrived in the Bay Area, and just by this amazing timing, I came there when there was this amazing renaissance of calligraphy and book arts, all bookbinders, letterpress printers, calligraphers. And I discovered the art of calligraphy. Calligraphy is a word that comes from the Greek, kalli, beautiful, graphos, writing. And I connected with this art form in a very deep way. In fact, the first time I sat down to draw, to write out an A, with a pen, ink, and paper, I remember thinking, I know how to do this. There was something really familiar here. And so I found teachers, and I learned the alphabets that were in use from Rome to the Renaissance, and when books were all handwritten before the printing press. And I went deeply into this study, and I set myself up in Berkeley in a storefront and became a calligraphic graphic designer. And I took on anything that came through the door, which in Berkeley was like a wide variety of things. I did signs, I did posters, I did invitations, I made labels for rainwater herbal shampoo, I made signs for health food stores for buckwheat groats and wheat berries, and I had my writing all over the place in town. I even once took on a job to personalize wine labels, which I thought was very cool. And then I found out that they were already on the bottles. So I had to write on a rounded surface and everything, you know. So I was just really building my capacity to learn this craft and send it out there. And then my life stream and the river of Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, intersected. And I became connected with an ancient linkage of calligraphy and spirituality, which has happened in many cultures, many religions throughout the world. Because this is an act, the calligraphic act brings space, thought, sacred, meaningful text down through the body, through the hand, through the tool, and it brings it into form. So there's a synchronizing act here. And I joined, deeply got involved with a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Chogyam Trungpa, and I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and began to teach at Naropa University and collaborate with musicians and storytellers and dancers and poets. But also at that time, I became botanical illustrator and was in an amazing environment in Colorado of ecosystems. And another kind of linkage happened that I began to understand that the source of our alphabet is in the natural world, that we have pictures inside of our letters in the same way that the Chinese have pictures inside of their characters. And even though our portal has narrowed some, it's still there. It's still a magical linkage. So this evening, I'm going to take you through a journey that I've followed, brought me from Boulder to the Hudson Valley, and I've continued to explore how writing started in the natural world, came up through the forms, handed along, and has landed as an alive practice of embodied expression now. So, where we're going to begin is the fact that there is writing happening all around us. In the thunderclouds, the shapes that billow over the hills. In the meandering line of a stream. In the cursive script of grasses, nodding in the wind. In a bird, making its marks in the sky. In a stroke of lightning. In the writing of rain, landing at our feet. So in China, in wanting to connect with the power of the world, one drew those images. Actually, everywhere, that's what happened, not just China. I'm just going to show you some Chinese pictograms. But it was that wanting to make that connection. So this is true, that when you draw, you make a relationship with the thing. So for ancient people, and right now, making that linkage is by drawing the thing itself. And then that form becomes simplified and distilled over time. So Chinese pictogram for rain cloud. For grass with the nodding head. For water. For bird. For lightning. So here in the West, also, there are pictures inside our letters. In Egypt, an ox moving to early Semitic writing. Phoenician. Through the centuries to Greece. And landing as an A. In Sumeria, an image of a dwelling, a house. Egypt. Semitic cultures. Phoenicia. Etruscan. Greek. B. And then in one of the driest areas of the world, the image for water. Mem. Was handed along. And became the widest letter of our alphabet. So these were passed along through the centuries and landed here in Rome, where they were carved on huge stone slabs. They're still there, the majuscules. And then from Rome until the Renaissance, from like 200 AD up until about 1400 when the printing press came in, during that period, books were all handwritten. That was the whole way that human culture was passed along. So I'm going to show you a quick journey through those centuries and get a feeling for the openness and the tension and the openness again, the legibility and then the illegible, wild, crazy writing, and then the I kind of asserting its order again, and the back and forth. It was like breathing, the way these cultures evolved. And I'll start with the letter G. Roman. Rustic. First books were made with rustic writing. It was just like they had to squeeze them like an accordion because they had to fit more letters on the page because the vellum, the calfskin, was so expensive. Unchal. Big interior spaces. Around 400, 500 AD, the monasteries were extremely protected because there were all these wild tribes running around outside. Half Unchal, the Book of Kells, the Descenders starting to happen. The Book of Kells had lots of creatures populating them. This logos of language and then the eros of magic all around it. Merovingian, completely wild, completely illegible, completely alive. And then Charlemagne came in around 800 and reasserted some order. And it showed up in the alphabet, Carolingian minuscule. A balance between legibility and ease for the hand. But then the tension began to build again. Early Gothic, High Gothic. And then it was in Italy where the Renaissance opened. And the Renaissance scholars went back and looked at the Carolingian scripts and found they never had really been able to do the Gothic thing. It had just been, there was too much sunlight in Italy. So they developed the humanist minuscule, that had that kind of openness of those Italian arches. And out of that came chancery cursive, the italic hand, which is what all of our handwriting is based on. And it was where everyone began to have a personal hand. So this is my palette that I worked with, and I made it fresh. I worked with the contrast of that condensing and opening up, and I'm going to end tonight with a 3-line expression that kind of plays off of these colors. And I'm going to use as my guide the Asian principles of heaven, earth, and human. So it's a bridging that I've found that in my work, I believe that it's very important to work with the letter forms that you were born into, that were around you when you first opened your eyes, because you can take a leap with those. But Asian principles of where we are on the planet and how we connect through making a true mark have been very enriching for me. So I'm going to start with a heaven line, and it sets the space, it sets the tone, and it's usually big. dark time. So once the heaven has arrived, just that sense of openness, and you could say it's a dark time just in this room here, or we could say it goes out beyond. Then I'm going to do my earth line, and earth needs something to be in conversation with. So here, earth stabilizes, it gives some ballast, and it converses with heaven. All of us. It's like this is the ground, is the connection right now. And then the last line is human, and it's the most sense of what's inside, where we are, and it's often written in a traditional way in vermilion, color of warmth, heart, and it's marking the uncertainty and openness of the human journey. In this moment. Waiting. Thank you.